Hey there, elites, how's it going? It's me, your boy Waddles. Welcome back. Hope you're doing well today. The 20W10A snapshot added 2 brand new tags to item frames. These tags were kind of a big deal, but unfortunately, a small brain over here couldn't figure it out for the snapshot showcase video. But today, thanks to a very big brain, that all changes. I mean, take a look at this tree right here. Do you notice anything different? I would hope so. The ground, the lower axe, that's the different stuff right there. All of those items are possible thanks to this command right here. This command is amazing. The new part is this invisible tag right here. The 20W10A snapshot also added this tag to item frames. The tag is fixed. The fixed tag makes an item frame basically indestructible. You see, can't remove that. If I remove the block, the item frame is going to stay there. This one, of course, I can break stuff. If I remove the block, that frame will eventually break. But this one, this is basically, it's there forever. So, today I thought it would be cool to check out 10 different decorating uses for item frames in honor of the brand new tags, specifically the first one. Some of these uses will use the invisible item frame tag, some of them will just use normal item frames because, unfortunately, invisible item frames are not possible in survival. So, yeah, I wanted to throw some useful tips in there for all of you survival players out there. If you enjoyed today's build focus video, let me know by dropping a like and subscribing. I would really appreciate it. Big shout out to Spin 3004 Plays for those commands. I found those in my comments section. Would it be possible without you, my guy? Thank you very much. Let's actually go ahead and start things off with a simple item frame use that is survival friendly. Item frames, of course, make an amazing sign because, I mean, they hold something. You can use item frames to represent whatever they're holding really well. If you start by placing a fence gate down, you can then place an item frame on that fence gate. You can actually interact with that fence gate without disturbing the item frame, which is pretty cool. You could then put something inside of it, but we have a big problem. The fence gate kind of awkwardly sticks up past the item frame. Doesn't look all that good, unless you put a wall behind the fence gate, because walls lower fence gates. Then, if you do that, you have something that looks like this, which is pretty much perfect for any sort of shop sign, building sign, literally anything. As an added bonus, birchwood matches the item frame pretty much perfectly, which is really nice. Maybe you're playing on some sort of SMP and you have a shopping district. This would be perfect outside of your shop. Maybe you have just some sort of town that you built in your world, maybe a survival base like mine that's pretty much a city and you'd like to label your buildings. Well, this trick right here. This can work pretty much anywhere, and any wall or fence gate combination will work amazingly. Personally, I prefer sandstone walls with birch fence gates. I think the tones match pretty well, especially when compared to the border of the item frame, but really anything would work. Set something like this up on its own pole outside of your shop, or maybe just attach it all to your house, throw an item in the frame, and you are good to go. Your house or your shop is now 3000% better than every other one on your server. Unfortunately, use number 2 is not survival friendly. This is an invisible item frame one. Take a look at really the ground here. The sticks everywhere. The sticks really, in my opinion, complete this whole seed and make it a really nice mood. Invisible item frames can be placed on the ground, and then sticks can be placed inside of them to create twigs that are laying down in any sort of foresty or park area in your world. If you're into terraforming, this trick is going to become your best friend. You can pair this with stone buttons on the ground and other plants around this thing to make a really nice naturey looking area. If you'd like, you could put an invisible item frame on a tree and then put an axe inside of it. It doesn't necessarily look like it's stuck inside of the tree, even if you rotate the item, but it's kind of cool looking. It's kind of cool. Maybe it could mark like your base or a secret hideout or something. But the big one here that I'm trying to show off is definitely the sticks on the ground. The sticks on the ground make this area feel a whole lot more alive, or at least a whole lot more natural. I mean, if you've ever been outside, you probably have seen a stick on the ground before. Pretty groundbreaking stuff that is in Minecraft now. This next one is another one that requires invisible item frames, so not survival friendly. So pretend that this is my house out here, and then I walk into the bedroom. Take a look at this bedroom. This bedroom has a couple different cabinets that look really good, thanks to the invisible item frames. Invisible item frames can be placed on looms, and then inside of those item frames you can place slabs to create the perfect handle for some sort of drawer. Now, in my opinion, you should rotate the slab a little bit so it goes upside down, just like that, because the handle looks a little bit better, especially when placed on a loom. Now, as you guys will see later on in the video, this works on pretty much any block. It's actually really cool, and you can actually use pretty much any slab that you like for this trick as well. Maybe we want a dark prismarine, like some intense, interesting handles. Well, you could definitely do that, but I don't know. Personally, you called me plain, but I think the quartz ones look a little bit better. With the loom, oak wood matches pretty much perfectly, which looks really nice. Now, if you like, you could even use solid blocks, like full blocks. Gold is pretty cool, or if you're adventurous and you'd like a small handle, you could actually use a trapdoor, but in my opinion, the trapdoors don't work as good on looms as they would on other just normal blocks. Lots of options though here when it comes to this one. These invisible item frames, when paired with blocks on looms, make amazing cabinets. Like, amazing. Decorations like these ones here will level up any house build instantly. You've already heard about using arrows and item frames as directional markers. Maybe you've even heard about using iron nuggets and item frames as directional markers, but both of those are old news because today I'd like to present you the hopper in the item frame for directional markers. Now this is a pretty simple one, but I don't know, I think it looks really good. In my opinion, I've never really enjoyed the arrow in the item frame look. It's just too long and thin. I don't know, it kind of looks weird. And then the nugget one, it's an arrow, but it's also not really at all. Hoppers, however, those are the perfect triangle shape for any sort of directional sign. Now, you could use gunpowder. The gunpowder would work as well. It's very similar in shape to the hopper, but the gunpowder, it just doesn't do the job as well. This right here is an elevator. If we go over here, we go up, just like this sign shows me, and then if I went over there, I would go down. Now, this hopper sign stuff doesn't stop there. You can, of course, use this in many different settings. Maybe you're setting up some sort of build in your server that you'd like players to walk through in a certain direction. Well, hoppers and item frames would be perfect for that. You can actually pair the hopper and the item frame idea with the first one that I showed in this video to create pretty much the perfect directional sign. Now, obviously, if you have access to creative mode, you could turn these frames invisible and things would level up a whole lot more. They would look really cool because then you'd literally just have arrow markers on the wall, which would be awesome. But in survival, something like this will have to do. Alright, Elite, so I need you to be elite for this one here. Just know that I genuinely tried. I tried to build my best statue possible, but invisible item frames work amazingly for faces, actually. It's actually kind of cool looking. Now, don't get me wrong, I get that this looks derpy, but you can totally see it, right? There's two eyes and a mouth. Without the invisible item frames, something like this would not be possible. Normal item frames would just look weird here. Now, of course, you could put anything in for the eyes. If you want something angry, maybe you put like red eyes in. We could turn them a little bit, and then this can become a frown, and the statue actually looks a little bit more impressive now. Still a little derpy, but I think it works a little bit better. This right here is meant to be some sort of guard statue. I imagine building this outside of maybe a castle or something like that. If you were building this in the swamp, you could remove these two things right there and have pretty much a giant derpy Shrek. If you're trying to replicate the build, these are solid blocks, that's a slab. These are upside down staircases, lots of slabs in here, and then down here, 2 blocks, staircases again, lots of slabs, staircases, and normal blocks. Over here, we clearly have a flagpole because I would be building this right outside of some kind of gigantic castle. The big idea that I'm trying to show off here, though, is the fact that invisible item frames are great for making faces on pretty much anything. It could be a statue, or it could literally just be some blank wall in your world that you've always wanted a face on. Before we take a look at this next idea, you actually have encountered a like check. Did you remember to drop a like yet? So the next idea is going to be particularly useful to you if you're into building roads or racetracks in your world. This idea is, of course, a stoplight. The stoplight is this thing right up here. Now for this demo, I went ahead and built a miniature racetrack. Of course, you would probably want to build this thing bigger. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't really work. It's just for looks. If you're building some sort of gigantic modern city, though, this is definitely what you need. If you've ever been to a city, pretty much anywhere, almost anywhere in the world, you know the traffic lights are indeed a thing. Now, this thing is actually really easy to replicate. Pick a gray block for your background, grab 3 item frames, and then 3 glass panes, or 3 glass blocks. Glass blocks would work as well, but I sort of like the panes because they're a little bit bigger, easier to notice. Now, if you wanted to get really fancy, you could actually use both glass blocks and glass panes. In my imagination, the yellow one would be the one that's on because it's the biggest. The other ones would just be turned off. They're basically unlit light bulbs. If you're into building modern builds, cities, racetracks, this is definitely something that you need to add into your world because it's really easy to build and it will definitely spice that detail level up quite a bit. Alright, elites, I am very, very proud of this one. If you saw my Minecraft 1.14 build idea video, you might sort of recognize this one. As soon as grindstones were added into the game, players in the community instantly said, hey, those things sort of look like wheels. These things definitely do look like wheels. Right here is a motorcycle, actually fully customized, fully detailed, finally in its fullest, thanks to invisible item frames. So the build itself is actually pretty simple. As you can see right here, it uses a couple slabs, a couple grindstones, actually a daylight detector, a fence gate, and then the invisible frames come in. So you can kind of go crazy with these invisible frames and the details. Over here are the foot things for a motorcycle. I've never driven one, but I do know that there is some foot controls going on. So that's what those things are. Over here is a fancy hood detail from the brand Quartz, I guess. I don't know. It's meant to look cool. Then, of course, we have a windshield in here and the back of the seat. The invisible item frames really add a lot of detail to this motorcycle, which without the item frames already looked pretty cool in my opinion, but definitely gets a whole lot more leveled up. Now, the fence gate in there is meant to be the handlebars. It might be a bit of a reach with all of these other things in there now, but they're handlebars, okay? Just pretend. Unfortunately, I will have to tell you that this motorcycle does not work for driving, but it works beautifully for detailing. Build this in some sort of city build, maybe in your gigantic house and you have a big garage, and your friends will definitely be impressed. The invisible item frames level it up even more, but without these things in survival, it's still a pretty cool looking build to have. Now, it would not be an item frame showcasey buildy type of video without showcasing this one right here. This is one of my all-time favorite item frame decorating tricks. Right here, we have some chickens on the stove being cooked up, which is really, really nice looking. Anytime you're building some sort of bakery, some sort of chef build, some sort of just anything to do with these furnaces and food, this is the detail that you definitely need. Now, the thing is pretty easy to build. Go ahead and grab yourself these items here in my hotbar other than the chest. First, place a smoker down. Then on top of that smoker, place an item frame and place a chicken inside of that frame. Then go to the side of that smoker and place a detector rail just like that. There is a little bit of Z fighting, that weird glitchy looking stuff, but I mean for the most part it works beautifully. You tell me this chicken is not being cooked on top of the stove. Now, of course, if you had invisible item frames, the details on this one would just go through the roof pretty much. The details would be amazing and you would literally actually have something that looks like it's being cooked on top. But in survival, this does actually work and it is an amazing detail again for any type of bakery build, any type of kitchen build, any type of build with furnaces. Of course, this will work on any and all furnaces, and technically, if you're going for some sort of super modern feel, you could just put this on a counter and have one of those fancy stovetop oven things. That would definitely work too. Now, before we slide into the next idea here, I'd like to showcase the counters as well. So earlier on in the video, when I was showcasing that bedroom and the loom, the drawer idea, I talked about how the drawers pretty much work on every block in the game. That is definitely the case here. This time around, I'm using gold weighted pressure plates on quartz blocks to create fancy kitchen drawers. Now, of course, we're missing the actual drawer detail, but if you take a step back and look at it from a little bit of a ways away, it makes sense. People will get the idea there, and that's the important part. So, definitely don't forget about that invisible item frame drawer trick. The thing is amazingly useful. It pains me to say this, but this one is unfortunately not survival friendly again. Oh man, this would be amazing if it were survival compatible. Fortunately, we do have things like stone buttons that let us replicate this in survival, but just not as well. Invisible item frames can be placed on the ground, and then things like andesite, cobblestone, mossy cobblestone, or stone can be placed inside of those frames to create amazing looking rocks. These rocks actually work, in my opinion, a little bit better than the buttons, but maybe that's just because I'm so used to the buttons. I've used them a lot in my builds. Over here we have a grassy park area and we have some rocks on the ground. It looks amazing. The fact that you can rotate these rocks makes things even more cool. Of course, you could pair this with the first idea that I showed off, the sticks on the ground, to make a really really good looking terraformed area. Dirt does also sort of work in the item frames, but just not as much as the rocks do. The rocks look very, very good. Now, you could really use any gray toned block in the game to create these rocks, but in my opinion, stone, cobblestone, things like those work the best. You can actually also use walls. Walls create a very interesting looking rock. Lots of detail going on there. Don't know if it would be good if done too much, but on a small scale, I think that's a nice little touch. If you're doing rocks already with the invisible item frames, the wall one, every once in a while, definitely wouldn't hurt at all because it can sort of get repetitive. If you do this, you'll definitely need to make sure you have some rotation going on. Otherwise, it'll look weird. It'll look like a grate or something, and that's not exactly what we're going for. Iron sort of works, but at the same time, iron sort of stands out a little bit too much, so maybe not. The ingots, definitely not though. The nuggets, kind of. I mean, it's kind of a small rock. Our last idea is actually not a singular idea at all. It's just a general point that I'd like to make in this video. Invisible item frames are amazing, amazing, amazing for detailing literally any build. Inside of an invisible item frame, you can throw pretty much any item depending on the theme of your build, and it will work amazingly. I mean, take a look at this workstation area over here. Without the tools being hung, it would look good, but it just wouldn't be the same. We have tools and armor scattered around on the tables and the ground, which makes things even more cool and even more busy. The invisible frames with the items scattered around here make this area actually feel alive, like somebody is actually working in this area, which gets me so excited. So over here we have a slab and then an invisible frame on the slab and then something hanging off of it. Pretty straightforward. Now, of course, that's not the only thing that you could do with these invisible item frames. You could set up some sort of fancy dinner for you and your friends in your server with the invisible item frames if you have access to creative mode. Set up some sort of table, put some chairs around the table, and then some invisible frames on the table with food inside of those frames, and boom, fancy dinner is complete. Now, if you want to get really creative, you can create blockception with these invisible item frames. What is this really? Honestly, I'm not too sure. The target block looks really interesting. It almost looks like a face, the blocks on the side, right? Those are the ears, and then, I mean, I just imagine the face, okay? The point here is you can do some pretty interesting things with these invisible item frames if you just play around with them. Mess with stuff for a while, and eventually you'll come up with something that you really like that fits some sort of mood, some sort of theme pretty much perfectly. I mean, take a look at this library, complete with books lying around. This library is clearly being read. Somebody is working in this library, and it actually looks like someone's actually writing a book in this library too, which is pretty cool. What I'm basically trying to get at here with this last one is the fact that invisible item frames are amazing for detailing. Minecraft's items, they look pretty cool. There was a lot of work put into detailing the textures for these things, so I mean, if possible, you might as well use these amazing textures for detailing your builds. And so, elites, that is actually going to be just about it for today's video. Which idea was your favorite? Let me know down in the comments below. Remember that these invisible item frames are only obtainable via a command. I'll go ahead and drop that command down in the description, copy and paste it into your game, and it should work amazingly. It doesn't need to be in a command block. You can just put it in chat and it will work fine. On a related but somewhat different note, I really hope that these invisible item frames get like a crafting recipe or something in survival. That would be amazing and seriously game-changing. Invisible item frames are something that players have been wanting for years, and if they were in survival, they would only get even more cool. Would you like to see more of these buildy focused videos? If you would, or if you just enjoyed today's video, let me know by dropping a like and subscribing. I would really appreciate it. Today, I would like to send a big thank you to my patron, Fred Monster. If you'd like your own special video dedication, check out my Patreon. It's down in the description below. If you'd like some fresh merch, I have that too, right down below the video. But until next time, it has been me, your guy Waddles. Hope you've enjoyed it. Stay cool. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye, everybody.